At Thanksgiving dinner, my sister-in-law criticized my daughter for refusing to hand over her toys, then guided her away from the table in front of everyone. My husband remained there without saying a word. As though nothing serious had happened, I calmly stood, took my daughter's hand and met his eyes. "You had one chance to stand up for your child," I said. "From this moment on, I'll make sure she's safe." With or without your help, the entire room went silent. And by the following morning, my husband finally understood precisely what I meant. The grandfather clock kept ticking after every voice. That sound has remained with me far longer than the turkey, the candles, or the snow gathering across my mother-in-law's porch. 11 adults stood near enough to watch my 7-year-old daughter, Renley, beside the coffee table with 2 wooden dolls held firmly against her green dress. Her cousin Poppy already had the other 2. "I already shared," Renley whispered. "These belong to me." Deline, my husband's older sister, moved between both girls. "In this family, we don't behave selfishly." Renley looked toward me from the kitchen doorway. Before I could reach her, Deline took her wrist and demanded the dolls. Renley naturally pulled away. Deline held on, and the expression that appeared across my daughter's face caused every conversation inside the house to suddenly stop. Then Deline began guiding her toward the hallway. "She needs to learn," she announced. "If her parents won't teach her, someone else will." I looked toward Callum. My husband stood only several feet away, quiet and pale. He never asked his sister to stop. He never moved forward for our daughter. I crossed the room, carefully released Renley from Deline's hold, and wrapped my arms around her. Her small body trembled beneath my sweater. Around us, Callum's mother still held a serving spoon. Deline's husband continued staring at the rug. 2 cousins remained near the dessert table with plates motionless in their hands. Nobody moved. I picked up Baxter Renley's much-loved stuffed rabbit from underneath the coffee table and faced Callum. "You had one chance to stand up for your child," I said. "From this moment on, I'll make sure she's safe, with or without your help." His mouth opened. No words came. I collected our coats and stepped into the snowy Vermont afternoon. Callum followed us only as far as the porch before pausing beneath the porch light, caught between the family he feared challenging and the family he had disappointed. At a peaceful farm stand near the covered bridge, I pulled over and climbed into the back seat. Renley held Baxter beneath her chin. "Was I bad?" she asked. "No." "Aunt Deline said I was." "You had already shared. You were allowed to say no." Her gaze shifted toward the windshield. "Dad didn't help." Children often understand the center of a hurt before adults are prepared to acknowledge it. "Your father should have spoken," I replied. "Was he scared?" "Yes, but he's a grown-up." "I know." She placed her hand inside mine. "Will you still hold it when I'm big?" "Whenever you need me." Callum returned home 3 hours later. Renley was sleeping upstairs while I sat at the kitchen island beside a cold cup of tea. "I told Deline she was wrong," he said. "After we left?" "Yes." "In front of everyone?" His gaze dropped. "No." The silence between us seemed different this time. It was no longer the quiet of a comfortable marriage. It had become evidence. Callum had spent his entire childhood learning that confronting Deline almost never changed the result. It only changed who ended up receiving the blame. For 9 years, I had confused that habit with kindness. Whenever she upset Renley or controlled another family gathering, he always said that's just how she is. I remained quiet because my own family lived 3 states away. I wanted my daughter to grow up with cousins, crowded holidays, and memories inside her grandmother's kitchen. Little by little, I exchanged our peace for a feeling of belonging. "What did you mean when you said you'd protect Renley without me?" Callum asked. I looked toward the drawer where we stored our household paperwork. 2 months earlier, while preparing our taxes, Callum casually mentioned that Deline and her husband had used our address on financing documents for her flower shop. I remembered signing a document years earlier. Callum told me it simply provided temporary support for a delivery truck. I believed him and signed where he indicated, "If my name appears anywhere in your sister's finances," told him. I'm going to discover exactly what I authorized. His shoulders tightened. Don't make business decisions while you're emotional. I'm not making one. I'm asking for the truth. The following morning, after bringing Renley to her pediatrician so everything could be documented objectively, I called my cousin Bridget, a paralegal in Burlington. Request every document containing your signature, she said. Get them directly from the institutions. Do you think there's more? People who depend on you not reading the paperwork rarely stop with a single page. 4 days later, a package arrived from Cedar Hollow Credit Union. Delene's flower shop carried a large revolving business credit line. My name appeared on the guarantee page. The signature was mine. The responsibility looked nothing like the agreement I remembered approving. The document Callum described as temporary support for a delivery truck had become part of a far larger agreement, covering inventory, equipment, and operating expenses. The account had been renewed twice without anyone explaining those changes to me. I called Bridget, submit a written dispute, explaining that you never knowingly accepted the obligations shown in the current records. What happens then? The credit union reviews everything. New activity may be restricted while they verify the guarantee. December was Delene's busiest season. A review would have consequences. But I wasn't removing anything from her. I was simply refusing to continue lending her my name. I submitted the dispute in writing and requested every account, property record, and authorization connected to me during the previous 5 years. The next envelope concerned the lake cabin renovation, buried inside paperwork Callum had described as an insurance form was a clause identifying our home as additional support for part of Delene's financing. The third file concerned Renley's college savings account. Callum and I were meant to be the only authorized contacts, yet there, printed on the signature line, was Delene's name alongside Callum's. Added 3 years ago, they had placed a contingent lien against my daughter's savings to back a commercial line of credit for the flower shop's holiday inventory. The breath left my lungs. It was not just passive submission to a pushy sister. It was a calculated, systemic betrayal of our daughter's future to keep peace in his childhood home. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply called Bridget, authorized every legal hold, and signed the paperwork freezing all secondary guarantees tied to my name. By 8 o'clock the following morning, the storm broke. My phone lit up with dozens of missed calls from Delene, followed by a barrage of panicked voice messages. Cedar Hollow Credit Union had frozen the shop's operating accounts right at the start of her peak December season. Vendors were canceling delivery trucks, and her commercial credit lines were locked pending a formal investigation into unauthorized liability assignment. Minutes later, a heavy knock rattled our front door. Callum rushed to open it, finding Delene standing on our porch, her face pale with fury. "What did you do?" she shrieked, storming past him into our foyer. "My holiday stock is held up. The bank says there's a fraud dispute on my guarantees." "Callum, tell your wife to fix this right now." Callum turned to me, his eyes wide with pleading terror. "Sarah, please. It's her busiest month. Just give them a call and sort it out until after Christmas." I walked down the stairs calmly, holding the manila folder filled with 5 years of bank statements, unauthorized guarantees, and the lien on Renley's college fund. I set the thick stack of papers on the entry table between them. "You took a lien out on your niece's college account." "Deline," I said softly, my voice cutting through her outrage like glass. "And Callum signed off on it while I was away visiting my parents." Delene froze. Callum looked down at the floorboards, unable to meet my eyes. "I am giving you 24 hours to remove my name and Renley's trust from every single line of credit," I continued, staring directly into my sister-in-law's eyes. "If it isn't done, my attorney will submit these documents to the state attorney general's fraud unit on Monday morning." "You wouldn't ruin family over a business mistake?" Delene gasped, her voice wavering for the first time. "You've ceased being family. The moment you put your hands on my child and stole her future." I replied quietly, "Get out of my house." When the front door clicked shut behind a terrified Deline, the silence returned stark, absolute, and unyielding. Callum stood frozen in the foyer, finally seeing the wreckage of his cowardice laid bare. The illusion of his peacekeeping had collapsed, revealing the true cost it had exacted from the people he was supposed to protect. "I am opening a new account for Renley today," I told him, looking at the man I had spent 9 years believing would shelter us. "And you are gonna pack a bag?" "Sarah, please!" His voice broke, tears finally spilling over his cheeks. "I didn't realize. I just wanted everyone to get along." "You sacrificed your daughter to keep your sister happy," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You had one chance to protect her, Callum. You failed. Now I am making sure she's safe." He didn't argue. By noon, his suitcase stood by the front door, and his car pulled out of the driveway into the quiet Vermont snow. That evening, as twilight settled over the farm, I walked upstairs to Renley's bedroom. She was sitting on her rug, setting up her wooden dolls alongside Baxter the rabbit. When she saw me in the doorway, she stopped and reached out her hand. I walked in, sat beside her on the floor, and wrapped my fingers tightly around hers, knowing that from this moment on, no one would ever make her feel helpless again.